How's everybody?
Fine.
Good.
How's your mind?
Clear.
With the dryer?
That's on? Then I guess I'll do this. I'll have to sterilize it before Sunday.
Why are you sick?
I have ringworm,
Oh.
or athlete's foot,
Sick.
or tinea, whatever they call it, from the animal blessing. Don't let those pets lick you.
Oh, wow.
And it's not going away, so, and it's very contagious. So, I don't know what to do. We need an alcohol wipe before Sunday. This doesn't actually touch any spot, but you know me. I'll fool with it. Something will happen. That's loud.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good? Okay. All right. So let's just take a moment to remember who we are, why we're here, blah, 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 so that we can settle in. You know, really bring your attention to your body sitting here so that you can drag your mind away from thinking about getting here and thinking about your day or thinking about what you're going to do later. And instead, just focus on being here. So you can notice the sounds that your ear awareness knows, and feel of the chair or the cushion against your body, which is part of your tactile awareness. Perhaps you just had a cookie or a lollipop. So your taste awareness. And then using your mental awareness, remember the reason you came here this evening. And using that reason, try to generate a positive intention to use your time well. The more we can be conscientious about intention setting, the better we use our time. And we all generally feel that we have a shortage of time. And then when you set your intention, try to combine it with the wish that it not only benefits yourself, but that it ripples out to benefit others. The more we understand our minds, the more we're able to find equanimity in our mind, calm and peacefulness. We generate that out, and it helps the people around us. our very presence becomes helpful. Now find the sensation of the breath, either the rise and fall of your belly, or the sensation of the tip of your nose as the breath goes in and out of the body. And let your mental attention rest there. And any thoughts that arise, just let them pass through your mind like clouds in the sky. And when you feel ready, just gently open your eyes. I think they're celebrating the last class. Okay, so you've had 2 weeks off from karma. Not really, because karma just keeps happening. So, but anybody have any questions that they've been pondering? Or have you taken a complete break from thinking about it? So tell me something about karma.
It's a law like gravity.
It's a law like gravity. Hmm?
You create.
You create it. So what does that mean?
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect. So our actions of body, speech, and mind create potentials that ripen as results in the future. What else do you know about it?
It's not a point reward system.
It's not. Karma is not a system of reward or punishment that the Buddha invented. So, okay. Yes.
Fundamentally means action.
Yes, the word karma means action. And in the Buddha's context, it is the law of causality. There are 4 elements to karma. What are they?
Well, your karma can't
transferred to somebody else. You always create your own karma.
Well, and you only experience results that you created due to the causes, due to your own actions. So we don't mix them up, we don't trade them, they're not like, baseball cards. So, what else?
It's specific.
It's specific. What do you mean by that?
Certain actions result in specific kinds of results. For example,
Well, you can be more general than that. He hasn't been here in like a
Yeah.
year, and he's answering the questions.
Yeah.
It's not linear per se.
Right,
If
there's a
I-
huge
yeah.
gap between, so instant karma is not in this
Equation.
context, so that's just wishful thinking on our parts. What do positive actions do?
Create positive karma.
They can create positive results. So karma's both the causes and effects. Okay? And then negative actions? Negative results. That's the way in which it's specific.
Okay.
Karma is definite. It is certain. They are congruent, the causes and effects. You can't experience the results from, if you didn't create the causes for them. That's two. There's,
It's definite.
that's the same as certain or specific.
Increases.
Karma increases. Very good. 10 points to hope. So, okay, what does that mean, that karma increases?
If you don't change the action, the karma is going to continue to build with momentum.
Yeah, they sort of say it's like if you plant an acorn and you get an oak tree. So even from a small action, many results can occur. And in fact, we know of 4 results that can occur if the action was a complete action. Mm-hmm. Well, let's finish our 4 elements. So karma is certain. Karma increases. You can't experience the results unless you created the cause. And what's the final one?
Hope to be rid of it.
It does not go to waste? or
It does
does
not go to waste. What does that mean?
It will eventually ripen.
It will eventually ripen unless 2 things occur. With bad karma, what can prevent it from ripening? Purification. With good karma, what can prevent it from ripening?
Causes and conditions.
Anger.
Anger.
Anger destroys our roots of virtue. So dedication can protect them. So we set a motivation at the beginning of activities, and then at the end, we dedicate whatever merits we may have, or, positive actions, positive energy, however you want to look at it, whatever positive imprints that we place in our mind that will ripen as positive results. If we dedicate it at the end to the great enlightenment, for example, that protects it from anger. So that's good to know. That's one that's worth practicing. Okay, so, and then there are 4 parts that make an action complete.
The object.
The object,
The
the thought, and the thought has 3 parts. Motivation, you've said some of them. Intention. I'm looking at Hope because she wrote things down.
Recognition?
Recognition, right, okay. So recognition means I'm picking on Anthony because he takes the test.
Too bad I didn't study more about that.
Yes, because he has to take that test first. So, nobody knows? Why does it matter if an action is complete or not?
Well, because you go from mental intent to actual physical action, and there's a big bridge between them.
But what kind of result does it create if an action is complete?
Definite result.
They all create a definite result. All actions have a result. Complete action?
Strong.
Complete karma? I mean,
It has the power to project you into a rebirth. Not all of our actions will ripen at the time of death. They can't. Only complete actions. You know? And so, having an object, so you have an object of your action, then having the thought, which is recognition of the correct object, the intention to do the action, and how you're motivated, then you have the performance of the action. Okay? So you have to actually do it. Now, if it's a mental action, there's nothing that you have to do. So, then what's last? Culmination. So it has to be, it's different for the different types of action. So with killing, what does it have to be? You have to, speak up.
The actual death.
the object.
Of the object. And with killing, it has to be the right object. So, I just find that interesting. So, if I want to kill Nicole, and if I set out to kill Nicole, but I kill Anthony instead, it's not complete. It's still negative. It's still going to have a result, but it's the wrong object. So, that's not true with sexual misconduct, by the way. So, I don't know. So, not going into it. That may actually not be with karma. With vows, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. And also, there are ways in which to make something heavier or lighter. And this applies to both good and bad karma, So what are the kinds of things that can make an action heavier? Which means it has more potency.
Repetition,
Repetition.
visualization of such action in future.
Yeah, that you're kind of planning it in detail. You're really making a deep imprint in your mind from the way you're approaching it.
Training.
Yes, you're basically training your mind.
Specific people like your parents or Buddha.
Yeah, the object. If the object's a field of merit, like the Buddha, like monks and nuns, like Arya beings, which we can't tell who's an Arya being, so that's pretty much everybody then. Parents, So these are things just to, keep in mind. What else can it be? What's probably particularly important
As far as what?
for making it heavy or light?
The intention.
It's the motivation, how intense the motivation is. And then, so if you're really angry, and out of that anger, you torture someone, those kinds of, just like in at least on TV, maybe not real life, but just, the same way our legal system works, that you can have, that there are crimes that make them fall into the category of the death penalty because they're worse than other killings, so it's just the same way, and then there are mitigating circumstances, that lighten sentences, so it really depends. Anyway, okay. So that review was fruitful. Now we know what we don't know. This is good. This is good. And the reason why you want to, think about, this the motivation behind your intention is that this is what, like when we talk about the possibility of preventing negative seeds from ripening, the effectiveness of our purification practice depends on the strength of our mind. If we really regret it, if we truly rely on the teachings, if we perform a heartfelt remedy, and we are determined not to repeat it, all of those things make the effectiveness of the purification stronger. So if you just do the practice, oh yeah, that's right, I should do 21 of these tonight, and you just go, blah, 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 it probably doesn't do a thing. So it matters how we, approach things. And the same is true of any action. But there's certain ones are opportunities for us to really practice with trying to strengthen our resolve, strengthen our intention so that they are more effective. Notice how easy, well, maybe it's not easy for all of you, but, for me, it certainly has been easy in my life to get really angry, to go from impatience and then get really angry, But regret is forceful. It's fast. It's not as anything, It's like, so, I need to recognize that I need to train my mind in the way I've apparently trained my mind in anger or impatience. I'm not much better with anger. But it's this, it's this kind of acknowledgement that we've been putting our skills to perhaps unskillful use. So, we need to try to redirect the energy that we already have to be one-pointed about something, and but not use it for anger or annoyance or whatever, but put it to good use, which is like regret and purification, or generosity and kindness and patience. Those attitudes. Okay. Ta-da. Okay, so the four opponent powers, which is part of the purification practice, I think we mentioned this, but it's kind of interesting. So the power of regret purifies the experience similar to the cause. So the experience similar to the cause means that when we have, say you kill someone, and then so you go to a hell realm or something, and then you finally exhaust that karma, and finally some good seed ripens at the time of death, and you're born a human again. In that life, the experience similar to the cause means that you might have a short life. Someone kills you, because you've created the cause for that. So if the strength of the regret is what can prevent that consequence. The power of reliance, or sometimes referred to as refuge, and sometimes, I can never remember all the different translations. It purifies, so the reliance is we're doing two things. We're relying on the instructions of the Buddha on how to prevent something from ripening. We're putting our trust in the teachings. We're also relying on bodhicitta. What is that getting at? Does anybody remember? I'm not going to let you touch it. Nobody remembers. Okay, that's fine. What is bodhicitta?
Cherishing.
No. wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, you could say cherishing others is the basis for that, but it's not that. So what have we said about sentient beings? Why do we need, sentient beings are the people we harm. So if we're talking about negative karma, so when we're using this as part of reliance, they often use the analogy that it's like when you fall, you still use the ground to push yourself up. So even though the ground is what you fall on, that same object is what you use to help yourself. So even though sentient beings are the objects of our harm, we need sentient beings in order to become enlightened. They are also the objects of our good qualities. In fact, they're the only way our good qualities develop is from sentient beings. So when we're relying, we're using those two things. We're remembering that, it is through our treatment of others, that will help us or hurt us. Either we make progress towards enlightenment or or the opposite. This purifies our environmental result. So in that human life, again, the result of killing also impacts where you live, like being born in a war zone. It can also mean that your resources are not of high quality. So your food's not very helpful. The water might not be clean, things like that. The power of the remedy. So this is that action that we do as an antidote. There's, whatever action, it might include a couple of actions. We might apologize. We may try, to use one of the traditional purification practices like Vajrasattva, or reciting the names of the 35 Buddhas. This is the one that purifies complete karmas, so that it won't ripen as a rebirth. So it's kind of important. And then the power of resolve purifies the action similar to the cause, which is our habit. So once, everything that we do becomes a condition to do it again. And the more we do it, the better at it we are. And the faster it just naturally arises. What we call naturally arising in the mind stream is really just means we have practiced it well. And then our reminder. This is really important when we're trying to practice purification, to remember this. Otherwise, what do we do instead?
Beat ourselves up.
We beat ourselves up.
We reinforce it.
We feel guilty, and depends on how you define guilt. To me, guilt is something that says, I can't change. It keeps us stuck. So that's not helpful. So we really want to not sit there and beat ourselves up or justify our actions because the other people were annoying. We want to be able to just acknowledge, I did this, it did harm, and I really regret that harm. So this, you may have to take a minute to allow it to arise, because you don't want to waste the effort without the motivation. Yes?
Could you ever do another action that would counteract it, almost like?
No, it would just create its own karma. Purification has to be intentional. So in other words, you can do a practice, like I often mention before we do a puja or something, you know, that if you want to use this as a purification practice, remember to generate regret, say refuge, do the practice, you know, and then make the resolve at the end to in a realistic manner, to not do the action again. So it has to be intentional. It's not like you can cancel each other out. You just get good karma for the things that you do that aren't, because we are a mixture of actions, you know. And it's not like a scale. The most important thing is our habits of mind, so that at the time of death, what ripens is a good seed, which gives us another good life with good resources, meet the teachings again, clean up our actions some more, you know, and we just keep getting, you know, better at our skillful actions instead of getting better at our unskillful actions.
So you learn from your mistakes,
Hopefully, but that's up to you.
right?
You don't have to.
But that helps with the purification process, when you actually can say you've learned from having done.
It's all about you. It's about your mind. And a lot of that has to do with that being able to generate regret.
Right.
You know, it's really taking responsibility for what you've done and understanding that our actions have consequences. They have consequences to ourselves in the form of what our results will ripen in the future, and they have consequences to the others that we share existence with. So,
That brings up the big question for me of how, because I might know of things that I need to work on from this one,
mhm,
but I don't know
mhm.
of all those other things. I don't have tangible information about
Yeah, you do. Look at your habits now.
my habits now.
You can just bet you were doing some of those things before.
Yeah.
You know, that it's a trend.
Yeah.
It's not an event. It's,
Right.
you know, it's like, oh, okay. So we do have a clue. And then you can look at things like your environment. And, you know, you study up and you find out, oh, I have a lot of illnesses. Perhaps I had the habit of killing people, or at least harming them physically. And now I'm reaping the result of that. Or you can, you know, you can have your face covered in itchy rash, which I think is sexual misconduct. You know, but it's just, you know, these are the things. You know, so you can look. So we may not be able to remember our past lives, you know, but we can develop a calm abiding in some life. We want to create the conditions in a future life that will allow us to develop calm abiding, and we will remember some of our past lives. And then when you're, you know, and it just gets, that ability to remember gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and Buddhists have no ignorance, so there's nothing that's left out. But this is why they call karma an extremely hidden object, because only Buddhas can see all the links between causes and results. Yeah.
I actually used to go down the rabbit hole at some point with that. You can always feel. You have attention to feel. So you have access to every single bad thing you ever did. Feeling. You don't need to know the details.
Well, it's that inner wisdom. You know, it's like that, you know, like often when we do something, right away, we know that wasn't a nice thing to do. No one told us it wasn't a nice thing to do. So that's part of it. We carry our inner wisdom with us to a certain extent, especially our strong habits, you know. And some things we learn in this life, you know, again, you know, oh, that's not an effective strategy for happiness. You know, maybe I should try something else. So, but yeah, you really, getting bogged down in the details, one of the things that's recommended is that whenever you do a purification practice, you just have a tagline, you know, you just say, you know, that I was short-tempered with, you know, so-and-so today, and for all those times I can't remember being short-tempered, you know, because you know they happened. know, so you just include them all. And then you can even include, and any other negative action I did today that I wasn't aware of. I mean, obviously, those things won't be very strong. You know, your purification of it won't. But what it does do is increase your mindfulness to notice. You know, so that you can purify it. You know, we want to notice so that we can nip it in the bud and also, you know, try to resolve to not keep doing it. So, yes.
Does it help to apologize if you did something to somebody?
What do you think?
I think it does,
Oh.
but you're saying it's mostly about your mind, how you reconcile.
What does apologizing do for your mind?
I think it helps you not blame yourself as much. Like I think that by apologizing, it's gonna take some of the burden off of me, which is in some ways not really reconciling it so much with myself. It's about how the other person feels about.
Doesn't sound
what I-
like that.
what
But
I-
everything you just
what I
described said
did.
about taking the burden off of you. How about them?
Up and down by apologizing.
You know, you might want to think about that.
I know, but I'm trying to figure out the way you're phrasing it or saying it, and that it's mostly about how your own mind reconciles. Does it really matter? Because how really they feel.
What do you think?
In your purification process.
And you're-
I mean, I think that it would, but I mean, I'm just looking at it from the Buddhist perspective right now. It sounded to me like it was more about your own purification, your own mind, and that, you know, whatever happened to them is their karma from me.
Oh, no, that's a big mistake
Okay,
to start thinking that way.
you know, from me doing something nasty to them.
We are all interdependent, interconnected. So yes, they created the cause
Right,
to have this experience, but you were the condition for that.
right.
So we don't want to pretend that we had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Sorry, we were participating. So we are the condition for that.
Right. So it's just as important to apologize in your
If you
purification
can.
process. Yeah.
If you can, it's not
Yeah.
always appropriate. So, you know, of course, we have lots of things that we're trying to purify that are old, you know, so we can't apologize. You know, they're not around.
Right, we may have passed.
They may have passed, or it may be harmful. If you have an affair, it's not necessarily a great thing to tell your partner. That can harm them, you know. And a lot of people do it in order to take the burden off themselves.
Yeah.
And say, okay, now it's up to you to forgive me or not. I'm not, you know, I've done what I need to do, you know. So yeah, you have to, you know, you really have to look deeply about your motivation for your apology, for your remedy, all of those things, you know, and try to generate heartfelt regret, you know. And you can have heartfelt regret for not only the harm you've done to someone else, but the harm it's been causing you, you know. So it's like, we don't like ourselves very much when, you know, from our unskillful actions. And so we're harming ourselves as well. It's okay that we benefit from these actions. You know, we have a culture that kind of implies that if you get something from an action, it doesn't really count. And that's not true. That doesn't even make sense. You know, of course we get something positive out of our positive actions. It's just naturally in there. You know, it leads to happiness. So, but it's this, the fact that all we have control over is training our own minds. So you can apologize to someone else and it may have no impact on the harm you did to them, you know, any of that, because we don't have control over that. You know, we can only take care of our side. But you become a condition for at least saying that was my fault. You know, I'm sorry. Yes.
A couple of weeks ago, Nicole held up a small gold book thing for
Right,
daily
about
purification.
yourself at practice.
I'm not quite sure how to use that. Do you read the whole book and?
Okay, well, I also sent you a practice. which is good to start with.
Okay.
You know, I emailed you a
Not
practice,
read
but
those.
yes, you can use the book, and yes, you do the whole book. So
Okay.
it has visualization, it has refuge, it has, what you think, and it's a short practice, right? It doesn't have a whole lot of I don't use it. I do a different Vajrasattva practice. So mine has all sorts of visualizations and, you know, but then I'm a nun, I'm supposed to have more time for these things. So, you know, so you just, but you do the whole practice. Now, if you're desperate for time, you know, then you can do the praise to Vajrasattva. Recite the mantra 28 times, and you can recite the short mantra 28 times, you know, try to, you know, but you still are trying to have that heartfelt regret that you're relying on the teachings, you're relying on sentient beings to, you know, our inner dependence on sentient beings, and then you set a resolve, and the remedy's just short, you know, but it's always, whenever you do a short practice, like Medicine Buddha mantras, because you've heard someone is ill, whatever, it's always good to do a praise to that Buddha first. So there's one in Medicine Buddha Puja you can use that praises, you know, Medicine Buddha. So you just, you know, that's the formula, you know, is to, you know, you go for refuge, you say a verse of praise to the Buddha you're relying upon, and then you dedicate at the end. And it's always good to imagine them being very happy with you. That's the whole part of these practices is about drawing us, what they say, it's bringing us closer to the deity. You know, it's this idea that we don't think there are any enlightened beings around because we can't see them. And these practices are meant to help us understand they're always around. That's what being a Buddha means. Their minds pervade everything. So they're always there to help us as soon as we create the cause. So by doing the visualizations, by doing these practices, it just helps us understand that we don't have to go anywhere to find them. So the meditation I sent out is longer, takes longer to do. So if you don't have a lot of time every night before you go to bed, you do the short version, but every now and then it's really good to practice it more thoroughly so that you can really get, because I find the slower practice kind of allows the experience of the regret, the desire to change, really sink in. You know, it gives you the time to do that, to let those things happen. These things can get I can do the long version of Vajrasattva in 10 minutes because it doesn't take me any time to do the visualization. It's, you know, because I've done it for so long. It's just there, you know, and the feelings and all that I'm trying to generate, you know, they come really easily now because of practice. I mean, that's just from familiarity. So it's just, you know, but you do, at first I'm asking Geshe Gelik to record the mantra in the, you know, my tape recorder because I can't remember. So it's a process. It's and some people get it really quickly and others are really slow. So doesn't matter. You just have to get in the right direction. Doesn't matter. So I can't remember if we talked about the suffering of change, and all pervasive suffering yet. Okay. I didn't think so. Why did I bring this up? I know Anthony, the other Anthony, asked a question about it, so that was part of it.
Suffering of suffering.
Actually, he asked about all pervasive suffering. So, so when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the first truth discussed was the truth of suffering. And there are 3 types of suffering. So the suffering, the suffering of change, and all pervasive suffering. Yeah, I think this is just another lapse in memory. Okay, so suffering of suffering. So you have an open wound. Now consider what would happen to that open wound if you put some irritating substance on it, like salt water. just kind of imagine. The pain would flare up, becoming sharp and intense. This feeling is what we identify as suffering. So the suffering of suffering is this kind of suffering, but it can also happen in the mind. Whenever something like this happens, the body or mind experiences an increased level of pain or anguish. You know, so it's like, you know, it's not just like when you wake up in the morning and, oh yeah, none of my body parts work, you know, but then, you know, you step in a cold shower and then they really feel worse or better. Okay, suffering of change is you have this painful open wound on your skin. The pain can be temporarily relieved by applying cool, clean water. That relief from pain is experienced as a pleasant feeling. It is not really pleasure, it is just that the discomfort has lightened up a bit. And that relief, that feeling of pleasure, will not last long. Soon it will change again into the suffering of pain. This is the suffering of change. It's what we call pleasure. So it's the relief, the temporary relief from whatever dissatisfaction we're experiencing in the previous moment. But eventually that relief becomes its own source of dissatisfaction. And so we're back where we started. So then we crave something else. We seek something else to medicate that discomfort. That's what we do all day long. We chase around, you know, it's like cats chasing around the warm spot in the house by finding the sunny spot. You know, it's like, ooh, you know, this is good, but then it doesn't last. So they have to move. Well, we do the same thing. It's really very obvious when we crave something, you know. And then we finally indulge that craving, and for a very brief moment, it's like, oh, this is delightful. And then that stops. And it can't possibly last long. Because it's based on causes and conditions being there, and it's going to be, and those causes and conditions don't last. Causes, you know, it's like knowing that birth, in the nature of birth, is death. You start dying as soon as you're born. Nothing else has to intervene in order to cause death. It is birth that causes death. You know, and everything in samsara is like that. The disintegration of anything that's been produced exists in the result itself. There doesn't have to be another cause that has to come along. You know, that might happen. You know, like with birth, someone can come along and hasten your death. But your death is a fact no matter what. No one has to come along. You know? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's true with all the kinds of what we consider pleasure in the world, all of that. You know, it's really just we're going from, you know, oh, that's better. You know, oh, that's not so good. That's better. We're just doing this all day long. And some people go, So the older we get, you know, teenagers are really good at this. And some of us just keep that up. But all pervasive suffering of conditionality. So that's just the causes and conditions. You know, that our existence, our aggregates are produced by our past actions, you know. So you have an open wound. We know that if you put cool water on it, the pain will be reduced, and we call that experience a pleasant feeling. At the other extreme, if you rub salt into the wound, the pain sharply increases, and we call that unpleasant feeling. However, even without either of those two actions, you still have a big open wound. That's samsara. So there's nothing here for us in terms of, you know, yes, we can make it a little better, but it's not going to stay that way. It will get a little worse again because it's just the nature of samsara. This is where, you know, this is like, to me, you know, when you think of somebody that, say, perhaps you envy, you know, somebody who seems to have it all, you know, they have a loving companion, they have all the money they need, all their children are healthy, they have good health, blah, 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 and say they have that their whole lives, you know, nothing seems to really go wrong for them. And then what happens? They die. And what do they do when they die? Are they prevented from any, if they lose all their loved ones, all their possessions, all that stuff, and they, you know, who knows what seed will ripen for their future rebirth. But I mean, that's as good as it gets. And almost no one actually has it that good. You know? Most people have suffering during their life as well. It's not just at the time of death. So, if we want that, you know, what the Buddha was teaching is that, you know, we need to understand the truth of suffering. We need to see the situation we're in. And then we need to understand that we cause this suffering. That our past actions and our ignorance are the source of this existence. And we can end it. It is not necessary for us to exist in this way. And there's a path to do that. So it isn't that we're trying to just have a more realistic view. We're trying to learn how to stop creating suffering results.
Does that come from investigating?
Oh, yes, it comes from investigating, it comes from contemplating, it comes from putting things into practice, it comes from learning how to develop your focus so that you can focus on skillful actions, you know, all of that. And mostly to lighten up, because it's never going to get perfect here, you know, so, you know, don't sweat it. It's whatever's happening, the best thing you can do for your mind is to relax. It will change. You know, what we want to practice is having a mind that doesn't go that just kind of cruises. Well, just cruises. You know, that just, oh, whatever it is, you just handle whatever it is. You know, you don't get super excited about it because it's good stuff, you know, and you don't get devastated because it's bad stuff. Devastation's going to happen. We are going to lose everything we care about. There's no point in thinking, you know, and trying to grab after it and make it not happen. We can't do that. It's not getting, we will not be successful, you know. So we don't have to let our minds get so disturbed. And the more we can not get disturbed, the better our odds are that at the time of death, a good seed ripens. Because we're not grasping after. We're just kind of like, oh, all right, next. You know. I mean, I know that sounds cavalier, but it really is just, okay, what's the next chapter going to be? You know. I don't want to grasp after this one, even if it's a good one. You know.
No reason to worry if you really know.
Yeah.
When on your deathbed that I'm not going to cease to exist completely.
Right. I think
You know
that's a
what I
big thing. And if you're suffering, if you're in pain, a lot of people are afraid of the pain of death, you know, the illness before you die, you know, or the suffering before you die. You know, if you can look at it as exhausting negative karma, because that's what it is. You know, so you can, these things take a lot of practice.
You can come make some more mistakes.
Yes, you'll have, don't worry, you'll have another chance. But more than that, you can practice being happy about it. Oh, yay, something really terrible I did. I'm meeting its result, it's exhausting, and I do not want to do that action again, even if you don't know what it is, you know? But the more we practice, I don't want to harm others that, you know, in any way at all. So anytime we have a suffering result, we're exhausting some negative seed. Oh, look like, yeah, that's all right. We are thrilled to see you, Anthony.
Hopefully from Orlando.
Oh, golly. Yeah, we're on all pervasive suffering. Wasn't that your question? And didn't I already answer it?
From a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
What was my question?
See there. Question finished. You just asked, what is it, basically.
Mhm.
So, anyway. You know, when you talk to Rinpoche about my favorite is Don Brown, who's the founder of the Center in North Carolina. Was years ago, he's one of the early on students. And so he had to fly on a small plane from either, Dharamsala to Nepal to Kopan or the vice versa or something. And he was telling Rinpoche that he was really pretty nervous about it, And Rinpoche just started laughing. And he finally went, Don, do you think you're not going to die? Why worry about it? You definitely are. You just don't know when. And worrying about it doesn't prevent it. So we can just let go of that habit. Slowly. So, but this knowledge, as you develop confidence in the teachings, and or at least have some, to me, karma makes a lot of sense. It explains everything, and certainly, cause and effect works in the physical universe. Why not my mind, in my experiences? So it makes a lot of sense to me. And so but as you develop that kind of confidence, it's this challenge to remember, oh, that's right, my consciousness cannot cease. There really is nothing to worry about in that arena. It will not cease. So
Even
what
if you-
will change is what I do have control over is making my conditions get better and better. So that finally I have the conditions that I need to become enlightened so that I can benefit others. And the wonderful thing is, even way earlier before that, is getting to the point where you've got bodhicitta, and so you've replaced your own self-interest, your own self-cherishing with cherishing others, so you don't worry about yourself anymore. It just doesn't come up. Our habit energy of always thinking, well, what's in it for me? Or, whatever version of self-interest ceases to arise. So everything becomes easier. And if you ever see Rinpoche or get to spend any time in his presence, you start to see what the effect of that is, because that's how he never thinks of himself. He never asks for a single thing for himself. And he's eternally laughing. He's always in good spirits, So, and he doesn't just laugh at you when you have problems. I guess he figured Don had been around long enough to understand that worrying about dying is pointless. Okay. Where are we? 8 o'clock. I could have finished the quote. The very nature of that wound, this is the all-pervasive suffering. The condition is suffering. It pervades all experience within cyclic existence, including our neutral feelings, when you don't have a strong reaction one way or another to a stimulus. It's like we're, a condition for suffering to happen in any moment. Because we're very, our bodies are very vulnerable. It's very easy for the body to be in pain, Everything can kill us. Everything that we need can kill us. The air can kill us, food can kill us, water can kill us. And these are all things we have to risk taking. So, it's quite interesting. All right, any questions?
Yes.
Yes, good.
It doesn't have anything to do with what's
Okay.
up there, but does Buddhism believe that if you pray for someone whose karma seems to be bad at the time, that it can improve their karma at all, or it's just,
When a seed has ripened, there's pretty much nothing we can do about it. You know, what we can do, our prayers, if we have a close karmic connection with someone, those are when our prayers are most powerful, is if we have a karmic connection. So, you know, a lot of us, you know, if somebody's sick or ill, they run to the first monk or nun and say, please pray for them, you know, but the stronger prayers are going to be from you, you know, because you have that karmic connection. So your prayers are the most powerful. Now, I'm not saying Rinpoche's prayers wouldn't be more powerful, but in general, all the prayers are good. Go ahead and answer the prayers, no problem with that. But don't minimize the impact of your prayers, you know, because you have a really strong desire for their situation to improve. They say in the Bardo that our prayers for beings in the intermediate state can help improve the conditions of their rebirth. Obviously the seed is already ripened, but the completing conditions of rebirth and stuff might be improved while they're in the Bardo. So, but again, it depends on the strength of our mind. You know, so it's like one of those, you know, with practice, we get better at it. You know, the more sincere. Also, you know, it's sort of like, it's really tricky, because one thing we can't, you know, we always can do is make the wish that they are exhausting all the negative karma, you know, and that, you know, that they'll be finished with that. Because of our habit, it's not generally true that we're finished with it just because of one thing happening. But I think again, you know, this is the reality. The biggest beneficiary of our actions are ourselves at this point, because that action improves your cherishing others. It strengthens that. And then that means your actions will be better towards others. So it's a good thing. You know? But the, you know, highly realized beings may be able to have more power than that. So. Okay, someone asked about the 6 realms, like hell beings, animal beings, hungry ghost. Is that true? Do you want to see what the miserable realms hold for us if we, you know?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Somebody came up to me one time and said, oh, I love Buddhism because they don't talk about hell. And I said, oops. Sorry. So there are hot hells, cold hells, neighboring hells, occasional hells. There are lots of hells. So you can either choose to see this as a place you're actually, not place, but you know, a situation like samsara, you know, you're reborn in now, where I have a human rebirth, you know. Some people choose to look at this as states of mind. We see people that seem to have these results as a human, you know. But this is what it means to say, you know, like if you kill someone, you're going to a hell realm. You know, and the more heinous the crime of murder, you know, the stronger your motivation, the more hateful your motivation, the more torture, the more dragged out you make their suffering, you know, you go to the worst of the hell realms. So, I figure I'm really familiar with hot hells. I don't like the weather. So, and these you know, you can learn in quite detail about all of these things, but probably not a good thing to start with, because there's no reason to worry about it. It's just, you know, what we do when we learn sometimes about these possible results is we get afraid to act, or we just think, oh, I'm doomed, you know. The hungry ghost realm, that is strong attachment is one of the causes for this, because you can't be satisfied. And so the result is that you have all these obstacles to food and drink. So you'll see like a big body of water, and then you get close to it and it'll be pus. You just, it's just, or you find water and your throat's too narrow to get anything down. So it's just this constant, not going to be able to satisfy that need. So it's not pleasant. I saw these pictures, Theravada monk in the forest monk tradition drew these images of hungry ghosts that were really worthy of, who's the guy who did Corpse Bride and Halloween before, whatever.
Tim Robbins.
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, all of those. So their stomachs are like mountains, their necks are blocked, their limbs as thin as grass, their dry bodies covered in dust, their bone joints give off sparks like flints, their merest glance dries up rivers, they are always weary, tormented by hunger. And so this is the blessing, may a shower of food, drink, and nectar rain down upon these hungry ghosts. So when you see someone who just seems always to be suffering, mentally suffering, and they just never feel like they can get enough, or nothing ever seems to work out for them, and they're just, this is the kind of prayer you can think of, is that they don't have the conditions for them, for their habits of mind, they're just really suffering. So we can sit back and say, oh man, I need to get over it. But they really are suffering. And so you just want to have compassion arise. The animal realm. So we treat animals like cats and dogs really well. Cattle, not so much. Chickens, not so much. Sheep, not so much. So being killed and eaten by others is one of the negative results of being born in the animal realm. Not having the physical support for their minds to really be able to work on changing their conditions, they're just left outside. They don't build shelters. They just have to deal with whatever the elements are. So this, we often will look at our pets and think, oh, I want their life, and the Tibetans would say, don't think that way. It's not a good life, Now, I think being a domestic pet in this country, is often a very good animal realm rebirth, but it's still just exhausting whatever good karma is ripening in that life. So, but we can do things, caring for our animals is a way to keep them from killing. That's a great thing to be able to do for your pet. We can help them have a peace of mind at the time of death, by being with them. There are all sorts of things in which we help our pets. So, we hear stories about the animals who get separated from their owners and they travel thousands of miles to find them. This is part of, this is their attachment. So, it's another part of, because they're not in control. They can't pick up the telephone and say, where'd you go? Demigods, so we have hell realm beings, hungry ghost beings, animal realm beings, human beings, and then the demigods. And the demigods and the gods, they're called the Suras and Asuras. I think Asuras are higher than Suras. Anyway. So the demigods are the ones that are possessed by jealousy towards the gods. So they're almost there, but not quite. So they suffer from a lot of jealousy. I think Hollywood really describes the demigods and the gods very well. They have good fortune, just like humans have good fortune, but they have even better fortune. and then the devas, which are the god realms. They experience the kind of pleasure, even though it's still samsara, that's much nicer than ours, you know. So the biggest problem for devas is that they'll spend 1,000 years in this, as described as heavenly bliss. You know, they this really great life. They have no health problems. They're beautiful. You know, their partners are beautiful. And, you know, everything's wonderful. You know, it's just gorgeous. And then the week before they die, their body starts to fall apart, and so they start to smell, and they start to lose, you know, their luster and all the things that happen to our bodies in a slower form. So they lose all their friends, because nobody wants to be near them, and they know they're going to die. So for that last week of their life as a god is hell. Not only that, they've exhausted heaps of good karma, enjoying all these conditions for 1,000 years. And so they fall. So they usually fall down into the lower realms because they're angry. So, you know, because they've had it all good, they haven't practiced any kind of tolerance for suffering.
How did they get there?
By being really generous, by being really pretty much doing everything right with no real meaningful focus. You know, they're helpful, they're, you know, so they get good resources, they're good looking, so they're patient. These are all the results, but they have no spiritual interest or growth. Yeah, I mean, they're just not directing it towards something other than, you know, I mean, and they're not even thinking about it, the good life. I mean, they're looking for the good life, they're creating the conditions for the good life, and they practice things like generosity and patience and kindness, all of those things. You know? It just ends up.
But it's not mindful, it's just sort of, they're doing it, you know, sort of in an unmindful way.
No, I would say in an unspiritual way,
Unspiritual way.
you know, because they like good stuff.
Yeah.
I
You
think
know.
of it as like cosmic recess.
Yeah, it's cosmic recess, and it's really a waste of time, and it really
Yes.
exhausts your good stuff.
So that's where you would go then into that realm. So it's a place that a human would go to. and
You
it's-
wouldn't be a human; you'd be a
But
deva.
before you were a human and then you became a deva. Is that what
No, it's not linear. We don't go uphill.
From wherever we go.
We go all over the
Yeah,
place,
we go all
depending on
over the
our
place.
mind at the
Yeah,
time of
that's what I
death.
mean. Yeah, so you would go from being this type of person that was just sort of
Just collecting lots of good
as a human.
action, not collecting, but doing a lot of
Lot
good
of
action
action.
that have powerful results. You know.
Yeah.
So you can think of people like this. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know their minds, so we can't really know. But people who have made lots of money in this life and are also very philanthropic, you know. So they're creating the causes for having lots of resources in the next life, and they're also pretty good people. And
But they
so
may go there for like 1,000 years.
They will go there.
They
I
will
mean,
go there.
the 1,000, their lifespan is fixed. Ours is uncertain. So, you know. You know, and people who just think in terms, well, I just want a good life, and I want a good life for myself, and I want a good life for my kids, and and that's really as far as their,
Development. They just don't have that spiritual development.
well, they may have it in a different life. You know, you're being too
Lineal.
absolute and linear. You know, we're a mixture of things.
Yes.
You know, but they've practiced a lot of good qualities, but just for the happiness of this life. You know?
Venerable Tenjin.
Yeah.
So, given based on the discussion, is being born in a as a deva or demigod considered not relative to being born a human? Is it not considered a good
Useful.
time to practice dharma?
It's not a useful, no one in the Deva realm is practicing Dharma because they're just exhausting their good karma, because everything's going their way. You know, this is what we talk about. You need difficult people in order to develop your good qualities. They don't have any. You know, except that person who's got 1 week left and they're dying, and what do? They abandon them. You know, so there's just, so the reason why the human realm is considered such a good rebirth is because you have just enough suffering, and if you have a precious human rebirth, you have good conditions to be able to think about that suffering, and do something about it. The demigods are too caught up in the fact that they're not gods. So picture that. And then, so they're exhausting lots of net positive karma without, working on their minds at all.
Does Deva mean God or?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just, I don't know why, I'm just, using Geshe Silpa's terminology. But you'll see devas, you'll see the word asuras, you'll see the word suras. I think suras is demigods. You'll see it in the Guru Puja when you're reciting those prayers. Okay. Then you can be born, there's also the form and formless realm. So you have three, I don't know why the terms, maybe it's the same Tibetan word, which may have been the same Sanskrit word or whatever, but, so you have the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, okay? Those are the three realms in samsara. Okay, the desire realm is where you have these 6 types of being, the hell beings, So the form and formless realms are also considered God realms, and the formless realm is when you have developed your single point of concentration, but you've done it for mundane purposes. So you just are attached to the peace that each level of concentration provides. And so you get to what's called the peak of existence, and you kind of go, oh, the peace of the form realm would be better than that. And then you work your way up there, and then you finally get to the formless realm, and so it's just, it's just that you're in a state of mental absorption, so you don't have any of your negative minds arising, and you like that state. See, what happens, what makes these realms dangerous is that you can get to what's called, I think, the peak of existence, or nothing at all is what it's called, nothing at all, and think you've been liberated. And then you die, you finally exhaust all that karma that keeps you in a formless realm, and you die and you're reborn, and you think liberation's not possible. So it's not something that we're not, like when we did teachings on karma abiding in a different class, it's not something we should aim for, because it has a drawback. Because again,
You get addicted to that.
well,
that
it
level.
is a peaceful state of mind, and you have subdued your disturbing emotions, but you actually haven't countered them. They're just subdued because you're in single point of concentration. You're not actually trying to control your anger or to cultivate patience. You're just simply in a state of neutrality. So it doesn't help us. It helps, we want to get that concentration, but we don't want it for that purpose. So. And they're still under the, out of control due to karma and delusion, so they don't have control over their rebirth. That's it on that, so we can end those slides. Questions? Y'all are with it. Have we reached that time where it's like, okay, that's enough, I'm full. So what's the main point of a class on karma?
Maybe to be.
Cause and effect.
And what so? So what?
So whatever you do, you continue, you're gonna be where you're gonna end up, or where you're gonna, ripen into.
find a path from
place.
cyclic existence.
To learn the path from cyclic existence. It teaches you about why it matters what you think and what you do. And then you can choose better. You know? So since it is a hidden object, we can't really know, you know, all the reasons why, you know, you have a big red rash on your face that itches, you know. But you can, you know it's not because you did something nice, because karma's definite. It's certain. So, so it just helps us understand that there's something in it for us to pay attention to what we're doing.
Because you're responsible.
Yeah. But I created the cause for that. It's not that somebody else did it, or, ooh, that stupid detergent, you know, or whatever, you know, or who brought that pet to the animal blessing? I shouldn't have done the animal blessing. I was so fortunate, because when I went to urgent care today, I had an Indian doctor, and so she completely got what my role was, and she thought it was wonderful that I did an animal blessing, and you know, ringworm's a small price to pay, and she's right, you know. But it was very helpful having, you know, having someone support that position instead of, why weren't you wearing gloves or something, you know? So, but it helps us understand that instead of blaming others for our situation in life, we can take responsibility for our situation in life. Not to feel guilty or to judge ourselves, but just to give us more control over our future, you know, to help us choose better. And to know that, oh, I have a problem with this, so I need to find out what are some solutions for this habit, you know, that kind of thing. Then the Buddha taught that there is no action of body, speech, or mind that is so negative that we can't purify it and prevent its result. You know? So that's good news. And then it says, guard your good seeds from anger. And a good way to do that is by setting an intention at the beginning of activities and then dedicating your merit at the end. Because then you've given away your merit, you can't destroy it. Now this is all mental. So the word purification isn't like washing we don't do that anymore. Cleaning the whiteboard, you know. It's making the decision to not do something ever again. You know? And what that does is it makes, in the analogy, it makes the seed we've placed on our mind screen incapable of producing a result. It doesn't remove the seed. It's still there. It's what has to be removed when we realize emptiness, but it cannot produce a result. And when we purify, if our mind's not very strong yet, it can still lighten the result. And- yes.
Sorry.
No, please.
So, from what I understand is that you can purify any action, but seeds will always be there until you realize emptiness? Okay, so is it not unreasonable to assume that then we have the seeds for everything almost? Like
Yeah.
any type
Anything
of
that
behavior?
has not
So-
ripened,
I-
anything that has not ripened, we still have.
So you could potentially share the trait that makes someone a serial killer, but at the same time you share that trait, maybe not in this particular life, but you share the same trait that makes someone very generous or, compassionate.
We pretty much have done it all. So we don't have to have any worry about, oh, I've never been generous, or I've never been kind, or I've never been patient, or I've never, blah, blah, blah. That's probably not true. For one thing, we have a precious human rebirth. That takes a lot of good qualities. You need ethics and generosity to have a precious human rebirth. We have, you need ethics to have a human body, and then you need to have good resources to have a precious human rebirth. You have to have had generosity. So there's no doubt we have these seeds in it. It also means we've probably all been serial killers as well, because it's been beginningless time, So this is, again, why we don't judge each other. We can look at someone's circumstances and we have to remember, that could be me. If this seed had ripened, I've been born in that circumstance, whatever, and I don't want to have that happen. May I purify anything that comes close to that. And this is where you really have to really think about things. Like anger is really a very hazardous state of mind, for our own futures. But also, if you really look, and I'm sure I've said this before, like when I was a teenager, I really thought guys had a better deal, and I really didn't like that so much. And so I was sort of that, because this was, following the feminist movement and all this kind of stuff, but I had a lot of anger, energy around it. And it's not fair, and, I let go of that. You really can't be a nun without letting go of that. Because all monks are up the hierarchy than nuns. And it's a very patriarchal religion, or the way it's been interpreted. So, but I was reading a book by a girl who was, in Kabul, is that right? Kabul. And during the Taliban, Afghanistan, and she couldn't leave her house for 2 years because it wasn't safe, for girls to leave their homes. So, but her brothers, her brothers had to do everything. And one of her brothers worked at a university, and his job was to clean rooms, all that kind of stuff. So one day he was called to clean up a particular room, and when he got there, it was body parts of women, and, this was just, not all that unusual, it's, a lot of women were killed, and girls were killed if they were out without the man in their life and stuff. But what crossed my mind was, that's what my attitude as a teenager leads to. It leads to total disregard for someone based on gender, and we just keep trading places. The Taliban with that attitude were the oppressed, and they didn't learn anything from that oppression, and now they're acting from that anger. And I don't want that kind of mind. So when that kind of state of mind arises, I'm very quick to go, no, you don't want to go there. You know where that leads, and you don't want to be that way. And so this is the way we can kind of investigate, instead of judging others, recognizing the seeds that we have that can lead there. It's just a matter of planting them and feeding them. We've actually already planted them, so what we want to do is quit feeding them. So it's just about really looking and saying, okay, because we tend to shrug off a lot of our habits, like, no big deal, I didn't actually do anything, I didn't, blah, blah, blah. But we're practicing a mind that, left unchecked, will become the kind of mind, that we abhor their actions. So, that's what we want to get from studying karma, is not to become more judgmental of each other, but to recognize we all have these seeds within us. And we need to do everything we can to cultivate the positive seeds, you know, and try to purify the negative ones, and also just, you know, and that comes from recognizing, you know, that these are not separate events, you know, they lead up, you know, that's what habit energy is. It just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The imprints get deeper and deeper and deeper. That's why they use these analogies. Because the mind's non-physical, there's not really any imprint. It's like, you know, but but it leaves that tendency in the mind. So we want to do what we can. So purification is what we can do. So that's what we're going to do. And hopefully they won't start rearranging the furniture. But actually, you don't have to have quiet to do purification. You just have to think. Good luck with that. I know we're all tired. Okay. So when we start a practice, we like to go for refuge. So any questions before we start this practice? Any lingering? Wait. Okay. Can people see this?
Yes.
Okay. So going for refuge. Now, obviously, if you haven't gone for refuge to Buddhism, you know, we're going to recite it in this practice, but you can, you know, you can go for refuge if you have other sources of refuge at the moment. You can use that as your source of refuge. You can use your inner wisdom as a source of refuge. You can use your future Buddhahood as a source of refuge, you know. But this is this is a Buddhist practice. So it starts with refuge to the three jewels. So we'll recite this 3 times. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. By this practice of meditating on Guru Vajrasattva, may I reach Buddhahood so as to benefit all sentient beings. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. By this practice of meditating on Guru Vajrasattva, may I reach Buddhahood so as to benefit all sentient beings. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. By this practice of meditating on Guru Vajrasattva, may I reach Buddhahood so as to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so remember that we're relying on the Buddha as the doctor whose medicine we need. So we're following his instructions. And then we're also relying upon other beings, the very beings that we've harmed by our actions. And we want to generate compassion for them. You know? So take a moment to just go within and think of something that you've done that you regret. And really try to generate that experience of the harm that the other person may have experienced. Sometimes you can do that by thinking of you receiving similar treatment at some time and how it harmed you. And you can allow compassion for yourself to arise, for the suffering that you experience from knowing that you have harmed someone. And then you can try to include all the times you've done something similar in this life and all your past lives. That you did it now is evidence that you've practiced it before. And you've harmed other beings in the same way. And you can feel compassion for both of you. You know, sort of in all sentient beings that, wow, we're all in the same situation. We're trying to be happy and not suffer, and we're not very good at it. We use all sorts of unskillful actions that harm each other. And we can think, but we're the lucky ones, because we have an antidote. We can do something to help ourselves become more skillful. And those who don't have these kinds of teachings have nothing to rely upon. And let that strengthen your compassion for them. Now let's recite a verse of praise together. Merely thinking of just your name eradicates all obstacles and immediately purifies all negative karma. Thus to you, unsurpassed Vajrasattva, I make prostration. So this mudra with the hands is a prostration mudra. So that's why it's good to do that when you say that. So we're going to start the power of the remedy. So there are 3 stages to this meditation. It consists of a visualization and the recitation of mantra. The main thing is to really feel the presence of this enlightened energy above your head. Okay? And recognize it as a mirror of your own potential to become fully enlightened. So this image of Vajrasattva is what you imagine, you know, this enlightened being looks like. It's facing the same direction as you. Or you can, if it's easier for you, you can just visualize in the space in front. Okay? So I'm going to read the visualization, and y'all can just try to create it in your mind. So you can either gaze upon the image or just go within. It doesn't matter. So visualize Vajrasattva above the crown of your head. He is your guru, manifesting in this aspect for your benefit. So this idea is important. He is made of radiant, blissful, white light. He's sitting cross-legged on a white lotus, which, although born out of mud, is untainted by mud, just like our enlightened potential, which is both born out of our delusions, but is untainted by them. His face is radiant and beautiful. His eyes are wide and peaceful and full of love and compassion. His mouth is red and very sweet. His hair is black and held up in a top knot. His arms are crossed at his heart, the left underneath the right. The left is holding a bell, which represents wisdom, and the right is holding a vajra, which represents the indestructibility of compassion. The arms being crossed represents the union of these two, which symbolizes enlightenment, the development of infinite wisdom and infinite compassion. So first, we're going to purify actions of the body. So while we recite the mantra, Vajrasattva compassionately sends powerful white nectar, as if it's coming out of a hose very forcefully from the heart. It enters your crown chakra and pours into your entire body, filling you completely. It forces out of your lower orifices all the harm you have ever done to any living being with your body in the form of inky liquid, which pours out of you and disappears into space. Not one atom left. So if you haven't memorized the mantra, you might need to look at it. And I've got a recording that hopefully will work.
Vajrasattva mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anorato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitami Titam Shyam Kurahum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te.
So now think that you're completely purified of all the seeds placed by unskillful actions of the body. I'm rejoicing that. So now we're going to focus on the purification of speech. Again, Guru Vajrasattva very happily sends a powerful nectar stream. It pours forcefully into your crown, filling your entire body, this time forcing up to the top of your body, like when water filling a dirty glass forces the junk to come to the top and to overflow. So all the negativity of your speech, all the gossip and malicious speech and divisive speech and lying and whatever, all is purified by this powerful nectar, leaving your body through the top orifices in the form of inky liquid, disappearing into space, not one atom left.
Vajrasattva mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anarato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Sitam Shyam Kurahum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anarato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anarato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te.
So finally, we're going to purify all of our actions of mind. So Guru Vajrasattva very compassionately sends this time light from his heart chakra. This powerful white light enters your crown and fills your entire being. And just like when you turn on a light in a room, the darkness is instantly dispelled, so too, just as the light hits your heart chakra, the darkness of the negativity of your mind, all the anger and violence and depression and resentment and jealousy and bitterness, all of our negative, unskillful actions of thought are all instantly dispelled, not one atom left.
Vajrasattva mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anarato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kurahum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anarato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Denu Patita Didume Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anarato Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Kama Sitame Titam Shyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te.
So all your negativity of the mind has been completely purified. So I really feel good about this. Imagine Guru Vajrasattva being very delighted with your actions. So now we need the power of resolve. So generate the determination not to harm with our body, speech, and mind. So without this, we keep doing the same old things. So we need to create this determination to not harm again. This can be like a beacon that guides our body, speech, and mind in new directions. But you need to be realistic. If you can vow not to do something again for a year, a month, a day, or even a minute, or even a second, whatever is realistic. So now let's dedicate our merits together. May the precious Bodhicitta, which is empty, the source of all happiness and success, which is empty, for myself who is empty, and all other sentient beings who are empty, be generated within my own and in the minds of all sentient beings, which are all empty without even a second's delay, and may that which has been generated be increased. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra realize things as they are, I dedicate all these virtues in the best way that I may follow after them. Whatever dedication the 3-time victorious ones gone to bliss have admired as best, in the same way I also perfectly dedicate all these roots of virtues so that I may perform good works. And then I always like to add a 5th R to rejoice. So feel happy that all your delusions, which are the cause of the harm you do with your body, speech, and mind, are totally purified, gone, finished, and that no way is there any space in your heart now for anything but love and kindness and forgiveness and wisdom and bliss and compassion. So this is like taking refuge in your future Buddhahood. And everything that we do, that helps us, points us in the correct direction, the direction that, can liberate us from this mess, and then actually teach us how to benefit all other sentient beings who are stuck in this mess, that's something to feel good about. It's not about, I can't rejoice until I get there. But that's not the point. We can rejoice long before we get there, and there's no reason not to. We want to encourage ourselves in this direction. So it's a very positive thing to do. So I sent you a version of this meditation, and I sent you this recording of the mantra. I'd sing it for you myself, but that would probably create some negative karma in your minds. So, not gonna happen. But, any questions? Really? None at all.
We did the meditation this morning. I facilitated it for Anthony, and we did the English version. Particularly care for the Tibetan.
It's not about you.
I know, but it doesn't. I don't understand what I'm saying, and I feel very awkward when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I don't know how that's supposed to resonate with my mind.
Because it's not about you. It's about the power of words that have been recited by realized beings for eons.
Okay.
So it's not a bad idea to start by reciting the English version or getting very familiar with the meaning.
The meaning itself, yes.
Yeah. And then learn the Tibetan version so that it just comes up naturally, because there's power in the sound.
Okay.
And you just have to, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a remedy that you're not entirely comfortable with. After all,
Yeah, that used to bother me a lot in the Catholic church when they would speak in Latin. I would sit in church
And you created the cause for that. You know, that's the thing that we forget. You know, like, I created the cause that I can't carry a tune. Y'all created the cause to have this nun in front of you who can't lead you in chants. You know? I want that to change. So every time I do this practice, one of the things I really think about is having created the cause to not be able to carry a tune. You know? So the discomfort, that's okay. You know, someday, you know how some people hear something in a foreign language and it just resonates for
Right.
them? They created the cause for that. You know? So it's not, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't rely on the English meaning, but we need to recognize that our feeling of dissatisfaction is from a negative past action. It's not being caused by the mantra. Yeah, it's not out there. And this is hard to get.
I just feel like it's a waste of time not knowing, you know, especially if you do know what it means in the English version, and you keep that in mind, I think that works.
Yes.
It helps a lot.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, but we don't want to lose sight of why we struggle. You know, because some people don't,
Right.
and there's a reason for that, and it's not luck, and it's not, you know, it's not from the object side. It's really interesting. It's really challenging to kind of keep these things as just something to think about, not to buy in. You know, me saying those words is not enough for you to believe those words. We have to do our own kind of practice. And I find the power of sound, because, you know, I can't sing anything. You know, there's a part of me that's like, you know, really, it's, you know, yet I created the cause not to be able to carry a tune because of the harm I've done with speech. You know? So why do I have any doubt about the power of sound? I really shouldn't have any doubt about that. You know? But I do. You know, but I'm trying to work on that. So, you know, I mean,
So
That's
it's
actually
sound,
a-
it's sound, basically.
That's actually a Sanskrit, that's not
Yeah.
Tibetan.
yeah, well,
Right.
usually the
So
mantras are in
therefore,
Sanskrit.
Tibetans don't all know Sanskrit.
None of
No,
them
they
do.
the Indians.
So they're saying this too. It's not necessarily their
Language. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
So it's a Sanskrit.
Yeah, I think it's Sanskrit.
Yeah.
I know most of the mantras are Sanskrit.
Yeah.
But since I have no affinity for language or sound, I'm not confident that I know the facts of that case, so, but,
I'll leave that.
yeah.
So is it, suggested or better or whatever to do just one thing of regret?
No.
Or if we think of a few
Yes.
that we wanna work on, it's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, some people I know tick their hand. Oh, don't forget that, don't forget that. It's really good if you do that, to tick the other hand with all the things you're doing well. Oh, look at that, I noticed all these things, let's tick one for each of that. You know, we don't wanna depress ourselves, but yes, absolutely, anything that comes to mind, you want to purify it. You know, and so that's why you do the whole body, speech, and mind routine. So that, you know, so you might, the only thing you can think of from today might be that you yelled at somebody or something. So you have the speech thing, you know, and then you also have the self-cherishing thing, because that's why you felt like it was okay to yell at somebody for not doing something you wanted them to do, or doing something you didn't want them to do, or whatever it is, you know. So there's also a thought involved, you know. So it's, you know, but yes, I mean, and then you just think the 3 times. Just any that you can't remember, not just in this life, but all previous lives, you know. So to make it as expansive, and also to remind yourself you've had this habit for a long time. So don't be distressed if tomorrow you go out and do the same thing again. Just notice, you know, and you just keep after yourself, and then eventually, not so much. You know.
Although when you're making a vow of resolve to
Mhm.
not do something, plastic, but also about degenerated valves, which apparently means you didn't make
Keep
them.
your vows.
Right. And the power of that, the downside is that there's a negative power to that, right? In
If you
terms of
lie.
Negative karma.
If you lie, you know, so like when I do my Vajrasattva about impatience, I usually say things like, for the next 6 hours while I'm asleep. Because I'm really bad at it, you know? So I have to be really, you know, sometimes I'll just use a specific thing. Well, so tomorrow, when this is happening, I'll be patient, you know, so that you're not lying. But it helps me anyway because it keeps me mindful all the time about it, you know? So, and we don't try to work on everything all at once. We just go mad, you know? So we tend to, you know, you pick something that you really see is problematic and you work on that. And then you pick, you know, and that kind of gets control. Or, you know, when you do something that is just horrible, you know, you certainly want to address that. So,
I have one more question.
Yeah.
The realms, are they analogies?
some people say that. Other people say, no, they're places you get reborn in. You know, it wouldn't just be in this world. I mean, none of this is, we're not limited to this universe. Or this Big Bang. So, yeah. But we certainly can, to me, we have enough evidence in what we do as human beings to each other. Why would we doubt that we're capable of creating even worse conditions? You know, we do pretty horrible things in the human realm. So, it's really not a leap for me to imagine it. But it doesn't matter. I mean, it's mostly, because it's all about the mind. It's about recognizing that we can change our minds, but it, you know.
So when you said I was being linear, I was, in other words, I was trying to visualize this analogy as an actual.
Well, you can do that, but you also have. So, but that's all right. But it's not so. We are a mixture of stuff. So we're going to have bad conditions ripen as well as our good conditions. So a precious human rebirth isn't one that we're just everything's going right for us. It just means that we have good conditions to meet the teachings, to be able to have the leisure to listen to the teachings, to have the mental faculty to investigate the teachings, stuff like that. Okay? All right. So everybody's tired. So rejoice in your efforts this evening, and that other people here were making effort too, so you're not alone, and isn't that good news? And you can rejoice in all the wonderful things that have happened in the time that we have been here in the universe, all the kindnesses, all the smiles, all the help, all the giving, all the patience, all of that stuff that's been happening, and that, you know, we can feel good about that too, because that's the result of them putting into practice some teaching they've received, you know, whether it's from their parents or their gurus or whatever, so their inner wisdom. But this is all good news. So may it not exhaust until all sentient beings are enlightened and there are no suffering beings at all, period, without exception. Yay. Okay.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
And everyone, it's the last, today and tomorrow, the last 2 days for the early bird tickets for the holiday party. So please get a ticket now or tomorrow online and join us on Sunday for Paula's visit.
Yes, definitely come to Paula's here. And on December 29th, we're going to have a Saturday day of meditation again. And it will have some purification, so you can clean up your act, you know. For
Yeah.